Hi all! So today for my video I will be comparing the philosophical methods of dialectic, which is Plato, and I will be taking from 5 dialogues. Currently I am in the Phaedo one, so if you're looking along. And versus meditation, which is Rene Descartes, and it's Meditations on First Philosophy, both of our books. So with these two texts, there are many different things that you can talk about, but also a bunch of similarities, which I'll go over. So with this video, I'm going to go over the similarities, which there are a few that I've listed, and the differences, which a few of them I've labeled like text style or time frame, because that usually ends up going into a lot of why people didn't want to like expose other people to this type of vocabulary or this type of speaking, or like really drives behind why these people said what they did or did what they did. And another point of view, like kind of looking at the point of views within the story, as well as my take on it, and a few examples from the text, because I feel like it really shows the different types of people saying these type of things. So with Plato, you obviously have the dialectic, and it's dialogue, and it's between two people. So within this, I found a lot of kind of awakening, because I feel like there's a different side of the story when you're listening to two people say something back and forth. Like, you can follow along with how those people do, or kind of get a feeling on how the one person talks and the other person like understands it. And in this, Socrates really hits home, and he kind of explains a lot for you by asking questions, or like explaining through examples. Or the one that I can think of off of the top of my head that really clicked for me was the algebra example. Like, he showed the four-sided figure in the sand, and he's like, well, this one has to be double this one because of this. And the guy was basically sitting there, and he had never even seen algebra or had talked about algebra before, and this guy was basically a peasant on the side of their conversation or something. And Socrates is like, hey, I will teach you this, and I will teach you without actually teaching you. You'll just recollect the knowledge. And that really clicked for me, because half the time we think that we're teaching something to someone, but it's really just them understanding what they already know in a different way. So that's what I felt like was happening to me when I was listening to the two sides of the dialogue, and it really helped me understand. I really loved the Plato one, just because it helped me understand, like, this is how one person perceives it, but it might not be the same as the other person perceiving it. So here's both sides, and you can look at it and then kind of react to it as you will. Whereas the Descartes piece had one side, and it almost felt like a journal entry. And that was more difficult for me to understand, because he only saw it through his perception, and he only explained things through his knowing, because he was, in an essence, in this whole book, he was trying to understand his own existence. And that is a huge thing to try and cover in, what, like 60 pages, 70 pages? And I understand it's like his whole belief system, but it's really heavy content for one type of aspect to look at, because he uses examples that sometimes I don't even understand. Like this wax example that I see, the piece of wax is only perceived only by the mind, and it's different from the other pieces because he sees and touches it and imagines it in a way, but it's really difficult to understand that he can only understand it from that point of view. And it's really confusing to me to understand his point of view when I can see it from Plato's point of view, which is two different sides. So the really difficult aspect was getting past his side to understand what he was talking about. And another thing that went into this was the text style, because there are a few sentences in here that either of them that I really couldn't understand, couldn't fathom what they were talking about. Like in Plato, it had this like whimsical, poetic type of text style that was really, I liked it, but at times I did not know what the words putting together meant. Like I found one passage from Phaedo where he was talking about living, and he said, "In this way we shall escape the contamination of this body's folly. We shall be likely to be in the company of people of the same kind, and by our own efforts we shall know all that is pure, which is unpresumably the truth, for it is not permitted to be impure to stain the pure." And honestly, I had to read over these a few times just to understand some of the words, but I found myself doing that less within Plato as I did Descartes, because I know Descartes went into such a massive topic and he expanded it over at least 4 or 5 subjects, or 4 or 5 passages, which made it seem like he was hitting on the same head but going at it from a different route. Like, God exists, but does God exist in this instance, and does God exist when I don't think I exist, or is my existence even here if I am not feeling all my senses, or I can't trust my senses? And it really drove home to me how Plato can understand, or how I can understand things from Plato's point of view, but Descartes was kind of explaining it in a way that didn't click in my mind. So another good thing to think about is like time frame. So Plato came first. He was from, I think I wrote it down, 428 BC. But Descartes, or the Cartesian method, is from 1596 to 1650. That's when he lived. And he's known as a father of philosophy. But if Plato was before this, then in all instance, Plato should be the father of philosophy, because he is the one that made it. He's the one that defined it. But I feel like Plato kind of had his hand in the cookie jar first, like showing people, like, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And people came along after him and kind of made their own definition of philosophy and expanded upon it. And I think that's why he's named the father of philosophy, is because he expanded out upon a subject, or a few subjects, that are so wide and so vast in such a philosophical method that it's so profound that some people, like myself, cannot grasp the integrity of the book. So, all in all, I think the biggest thing to take away is the poetic nature of each of these books, and I think that really made me understand more. I mean, Plato really gave me a deeper understanding because he explained it in such a way that I got into it. I loved philosophy after this book, and it helped to understand through two people's eyes. So, that's all I have for you now, and thank you very much.